Welcome to today's Catholic Daily Readings from Christus Dominus Bread of Life. A reading from the letter of St. Paul to the Colossians. He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of every creature. For in him was created everything in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominations or principalities or powers. All things were created through him and in him, and he is before all, and in him all things continue to exist. And he is the head of the body of the church. He is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, so that in all things he may hold primacy. For in him it pleased the Father that all fullness should dwell, and that through him all things be reconciled to himself, making peace through the blood of his cross, both on earth and in heaven.
Enter his gates with thanksgiving. Know that the Lord is God. He made us his. We are his people, the flock he tends. Forever faithful, forever kind.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. But they said to him, Why do the disciples of John fast frequently and make supplications, and those of the Pharisees act similarly, while your disciples eat and drink? But Jesus said to them, How can you cause the sons of the bridegroom to fast, while the bridegroom is still with them? But the days will come when the bridegroom will be taken away from them. Then they will fast in those days. And he also told them a parable. No one sews a patch from a new garment onto an old garment. Otherwise, he both tears the new, and the patch from the new garment does not join with the old. And no one puts new wine into old wineskins. Otherwise, the new wine ruptures the wineskins, and it will be poured out, and the wineskins will be lost. Instead, the new wine is put into new wineskins, and both are preserved. And no one who is drinking the old wine immediately desires the new, for he says the old is better. Join us for today's reflection. The Pharisees have a legitimate complaint. John the Baptist's disciples fast regularly, engaging in the kind of serious spiritual discipline that demonstrates commitment to religious transformation. The Pharisees themselves maintain rigorous fasting schedules that mark them as people who take their relationship with God seriously. But Jesus' disciples seem to be having too much fun, eating and drinking like they're at a perpetual celebration, instead of pursuing the demanding path of spiritual growth. Their question cuts to the heart of religious expectations. Why do you eat and drink? It's not just about dietary habits. They're asking why Jesus' approach to spirituality looks so different from every other serious religious movement they've encountered. Where's the discipline? Where's the sacrifice? Where's the evidence that these people understand the gravity of pursuing divine relationship? Jesus' response reveals something fundamental about the nature of spiritual revolution. He tells them that wedding guests don't fast while the bridegroom is present, but they will fast when he's taken away. Then he offers two parables that explain why his movement can't be contained within existing religious structures. New cloth tears old garments, and new wine bursts old wineskins. These aren't gentle illustrations about religious reform. They're warnings about spiritual revolution that will destroy the containers people have built to hold their understanding of how God works. The new wine of the kingdom isn't just better than what came before. It's fundamentally incompatible with the structures designed to contain the old wine. Paul's description of Christ in the Colossian letter helps explain why this revolution was inevitable. He presents Jesus as the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation, the one in whom all things were created and in whom all things hold together. This isn't just elevated religious rhetoric. It's a complete redefinition of reality that makes every previous religious system obsolete. When the source of all creation shows up in human form, the categories people have developed for understanding divine relationship become inadequate. The fasting schedules, the purity codes, the temple sacrifices, the careful distinctions between sacred and secular, all of these represent attempts to organize religious life around principles that assume God remains at a safe distance from ordinary human experience. But if Jesus is actually the one in whom all things hold together, then the distinction between sacred and secular dissolves. If he's the image of the invisible God walking among his disciples, then every meal becomes a sacred feast. If he's the firstborn of all creation sharing their daily life, then celebration becomes more appropriate than the fasting that expresses longing for divine presence. The old wineskins of religious structure were designed for a God who had to be approached through careful ritual and maintained distance. They can't contain the new wine of a God who sits down to dinner with tax collectors and shares ordinary conversation with fishermen. The institutional forms that managed relationship with a transcendent deity can't handle the reality of divine presence made accessible through incarnation. This is why Jesus warns that putting new wine into old wineskins destroys both the wine and the container. The religious leaders aren't just being asked to modify their practices or update their theology. They're being confronted with a reality that makes their entire system of religious management irrelevant. The God they've spent their lives learning to approach through proper channels has bypassed all their carefully constructed barriers and shown up without permission. The Psalm's invitation to come with joy into the presence of the Lord takes on new meaning in this context. The joy isn't just emotional happiness, but the appropriate response to discovering that divine presence is no longer hidden behind religious protocols. The barriers that required fasting, sacrifice, and ritual purification to cross have been removed. Access to God's presence has become as simple as sitting down to eat with Jesus. But this accessibility creates its own spiritual crisis. When divine presence becomes ordinary, how do you maintain the reverence that recognizes its extraordinary nature? When the sacred shows up in secular settings, how do you avoid trivializing what you're encountering? When God becomes approachable without religious preparation, How do you preserve the transformation that religious discipline was meant to produce? Jesus' disciples will eventually discover the answer to these questions when the bridegroom is taken away and they do begin to fast. But during his earthly ministry, their calling is to recognize that they're living in the wedding feast of divine presence made accessible. The joy that scandalized religious observers was actually the appropriate response to encountering God without barriers. The tragedy is that those most committed to serving God often become most resistant to recognizing God when divine presence appears in forms that don't match their religious expectations. The Pharisees' dedication to fasting and spiritual discipline was genuine, but it became a barrier to recognizing that the purpose of their discipline was standing right in front of them. Paul's cosmic description of Christ suggests that this recognition requires expanding religious categories beyond anything previous generations could have imagined. If all things were created through Jesus and all things hold together in him, then encountering him means encountering the foundation of reality itself. That kind of meeting calls for celebration, not the fasting that expresses longing for what seems absent. The new wine of the kingdom continues to burst the old wineskins of religious expectation in every generation. People who have invested their spiritual lives in particular forms of religious practice often struggle to recognize divine presence when it appears outside those familiar structures. But the God who created all things and holds all things together refuses to remain contained within human religious management systems, no matter how sincere or well-intentioned they might be.